Pivot table is a very powerful and useful tool, but outcome of it is still number. Is there a way by which we can visually interpret this data and observe trends without getting into the number crunching? Luckily, Excel has a tool specific to this requirement, and that is the topic for today, that is pivot charts and slicers. So let's get started. I'll also share a bonus tip for the pivot charts, so keep watching this video till the end.
This is the data we would be using for today's session. This is sales information for an organization dealing in stationery products. I've already created two pivot tables on this data. This is the first one, which talks about amount of sales done for each category per year. And the second one, this is for cumulative sales for all categories of stationery items. If you are not sure how to create the pivot tables, then go ahead and check out a video on my channel. For the link for the same you can get in the I button and in the description of this video, and that video will tell you how to create the pivot tables. Coming back to pivot charts and slicers, whenever you click inside a pivot table, any cell in pivot table, then you will get two additional options in the menu items. If you can see, these two additional menu items are pivot table analyze and design. These two are available only when you have clicked any cell within the pivot table. Okay, and how these two works, let us see now. In the pivot table analyze, you click on this option, and this will give you all the options or all the operations that you can perform on a pivot table. So what we are interested in today is pivot charts. So this is the pivot chart. Let me click on this pivot chart and see we have all the available charts. We can have charts at one other location also in Excel. If I cancel it, I'll show you. If you go and insert, you will get an option of charts here itself. There is a full group of charts that you can create from here. But these are normal charts, but the one we would be talking about today is specific to a pivot table. So that's the reason these are called pivot charts. So I click on this. Now looking at our data is the cumulative sales figure. So for a cumulative data, it's always advisable to have a line chart. So this is the line chart. So the moment you click on it, it will give you, it will create a chart for you, and you can just click OK, and this chart gets added to your worksheet. So this is how a line chart is created. Line charts, as I told you, are advisable for our cumulative data. But if you see, there is some additional things that you see on this chart, which we will not get on the other charts. So what is that? So the first one that we are looking at is category. So this is actually a filter on this. So let's say in our case we have total 4 categories, and if you want to see information only on any 1 or 2 or 3 or multiple combinations of these categories, then we can go ahead here, click on this down arrow, and we'll get all the options. Here we have an option of selecting whatever categories you want to see. Let's say in our case we just want to see office supplies and school supplies. We are not interested in writing instruments and writing pads, so we'll uncheck these two options and click on OK. So the graph automatically changes, and now it will show you only these two options. We can go back, and you can observe there is a change here, that we are getting this additional filter icon here within the category. That means that our data is currently filtered. So you can go back and click on this again and select all, and you can click here, click on select all, click on OK, and all the information is back. The same thing here you can do with date. So all the dates are mentioned here. If any particular date you don't want to see, then you can unselect that date. So this is how a line chart is created. Line chart in in a pivot chart is created. And now we come back to our other pivot table, which is for amount of sales done for each category per year. And for this kind of data, also we will create a pivot chart, but this time we will create a bar chart. You can again go to pivot chart analyze, pivot table analyze, sorry, and click on pivot charts. And as you can see, automatically it is showing us the column chart, which is showing us the data for all 3 years. You can click on OK, and this data is visible here. So this is how we are going to create pivot charts. And now, as you can see earlier in the pivot table, we are getting all the data, and trend was not very clear. But here, with this graph, we can easily see how the sales have performed. In case of office supplies, there is no sale in 2017. Sorry, for office school supplies, there is no sale in 2017, but in 2018 and 2019 we have that sale, and this office supplies sales have peaked in 2019. So this kind of information is clearly visible from this chart, rather than when we look into the data, it is all numbers, and it's not that easy to figure out which one is the bigger figure and how the trends is going. So this is the basic advantage of having pivot charts. Now moving to the second thing, slicers. Before that, let me move these two charts to a separate worksheet.
Now that we have copied these two charts on a separate sheet, so before creating a slicer, we need to first remove these two category fields which we see on both of the graphs. This is the field category field button. This is the category field button on this. So we need to remove this before creating a slicer. How are we going to do that? Is within this pivot chart analyze menu option, there is a button called field button. So we'll go ahead and click on that field button, and under that there is an option called hide all, and we'll click on hide all. So all the buttons get removed. Same we'll do with the other chart also. So this is removed. So now we are coming back to slicers. So how are we going to create a slicer? For that, again, there is under pivot chart analyze option in the menu, there is one operation that is insert slicer that can be used for creating a slicer. So we'll click on insert slicer. Now, under that insert slicer window, you'll get all the fields that were there in your data with a checkbox in front of them. So, which means that we can create slicer or on any or all of the fields available in our data. So, we need to understand what is our important data and on which we want to filter the data. In our case, let us try to do that same on years and months. So we are using these two fields. So there will be two slicers created for our data, one for years and one for months. We click on OK, and we'll get two windows here. One is for months and one is for slicer. So in the years, one is for years. So in the years, you will see two additional values, but they are disabled because there is no data available for that. So we can just reduce the size of the window, as we don't want to use that two option because there is no data. So here, so if you can see, you will get a button-like structure for the different fields. Like for year, we have 3 years, so there are three different buttons for these years. And for months, same way for 12 months, we are having a separate button for each month. So this particular tool, Slicer, is used to filter data in our pivot chart and our pivot table also. How are we? How's that going to happen? We'll see. So let's say in our case, we want to see data only for 2018. So we'll click on 2018. So right now, what you see in your chart is only data for 2018. But let's say It's up to your choice, whatever you want to see. If you want to see 2017, this is the 2017 data, then this is 2019. But right now, we are able to see data only for 1 year. But if you want to see for multiple years, then there is a button for multiple select. If you see, there is a button right in the top of the slicer window, which is for multi select. So you can click on that, and this multi select will be enabled. And after that, when you click on multiple buttons, so the data would be for those years only which are selected. So in our case, it is for 2017 and 2019. So our graph or our pivot chart will show the data for only 2017 and 19. So our data is getting filtered on only those years which are selected. Same operations can be performed on this month slicer also. So now the next question is that now we have created two slicers for a single chart. So let's say if we want to perform the same activity for other charts also, so there will be a multiple number of slicers gets created for each chart. So how are we going to handle it? Because there will be so many, even if we have, let's say, only three, four charts on the sheet. So if we have a separate slicer for each chart, and there can be multiple slicers also, so the number of slicers would be high and it will be really difficult to manage. So to handle that, there is a utility that you can attach one slicer to multiple charts also. How are we how that is done, we'll see now. Let's first of all uh, uh, click on this to clear all the filters from the year slicer. Now all the data is available. Now if you right click on the years or any slicer for that matter, you get an option report connections. So click on that. It will open a window for you where you can see there are in the list two pivots are shown. In our data also we have created two pivots. So these two pivots are shown in this window. The name of these pivots are pivot table 2 and pivot table 5. So right now pivot table 5 is already selected. So that's the pivot on which this slicer is currently attached to. But we can attach that to other pivots also. Like in our case, it is pivot 2 which is not yet attached. So if we click on this checkbox and click OK, so now the year slicer gets attached to the other pivot table and the chart also. So as I've already discussed, that this pivot charts are coming from a pivot table, and so this pivot chart, pivot table, and slicers are strongly tied with each other. So whenever we make a change in any one of the any one of the thing, others will also get updated. So now in this case, we have attached this particular slicer for years for both the charts. So if we click on any value, let's say 2017, so both the charts get updated for that value. So in this case, because as the multiple select was enabled and all of the values were selected, so this time this has done a reverse procedure. When we select 2017, so that's the only value that gets deselected. So now 2018 and 2019 are there available. And the data is available for 2018 and 19 only. So if it, let's say, remove 2019 also, so both the graphs will get updated for data for 2018 only. So that way we can filter the data uh, of multiple charts by a single slicer. The same thing can be done for that other slicer also. Let us first clear all the filters from here, and all the values are available. Now on the month, again we will right click, go to report connections, and attach the other pivot with this, and click on OK. So now this month slicer is also attached to both the charts. If we click on, let's say, May month, so the data in both the charts get updated and get filtered for only the May month data. With the help of these tools, it's very easy to analyze our data and see the trends as compared to the data that was available in the pivot tables. So with that, it's time for us to get to the bonus tip. Before that, let's first clear all the filters from here, and then we go to the sheet which was having a pivot table for us. Okay, so this is the pivot table. So in this pivot table, let's say if we want to see the data for the sale of writing pad in the year 2017. If we want to use this data somewhere in our rest of the worksheet, how are we going to use this data from there? Because this data would change whenever we have new data added to our data set. The data in the pivot will also change. So we don't want to directly copy from here. We just want a reference of this data there, so that whenever there is a change in this data, that reference also get automatically updated. So one way of doing this is wherever we want this data, we go to that cell, press equal to, and then the location of this cell, that is E3. So you'll get this data 1425. Okay. And also if we want to, let's say below that, we want the data for 2018 also. So we'll just drag it. We'll get the data for 2018 and then 2019. Okay. So this is an easy way of doing it. But as you must be aware that pivot tables are dynamic in nature. So right now we have the data for writing pad. So that's the reason you'll get a column of writing pad and pivot table. But going forward, let's say if we want data for a sheet um, for which the column location changes. Let's say we have some additional item that is part of our sales now, and which gets added, and because you can see they are alphabetically arranged. Let's say if we have a new category which comes before writing pad, so the location of the writing pad column changes from E to maybe F or G. So how are we going to make sure that every time we are picking the data for writing pad only and not any other field? So how are we going to do that? So that's what we will be discussing here. So for that, wherever you want this data, just go to that cell, click on equal to, and rather than typing the cell location directly here, we just go and select that particular cell within the pivot table. So in this case, we select this, and this way a formula get auto populated. If you can see this is a formula for get pivot data, and then there is a total is the name of that area where this pivot table is there. A1 is the location. Why there are two dollar sign between A and 1 and before A, we'll see. This is the absolute reference. So what is the difference between an absolute reference and a relative reference? If you want to know, I'll have another video on this, because this is a elaborate topic and we can discuss it in a separate video. So as of now, for our understanding, this is exact reference or absolute reference, which means that it will not change every time we drag this formula or take it anywhere. It will be A1 only. Then the category. Okay, so the category um, is the name of the column range which is there. So in our case, it is category, and then which category are we looking for? We are looking for writing pad, and then in the row, which what is the data in the row? That is years, and then followed by which year. So we are talking about 2017 here. So this is the formula gets auto populated, and when you click on enter, so the same figure 1425 is displayed in the cell. But the advantage of this formula is that wherever you will write this formula, so even if the writing pad column changes from E to F later, so you will not have any problem. So the data from that column would be picked up wherever the writing pad is there in the pivot table. So let's say if we want for 2017. After that, below that, we want data for 2018 and then 19 also. So if we drag it, see, in this way, if we drag it, it's showing us the same 1425 and it's not changing it for 2018 and 19. So what could be the reason behind that? Let us see. The reason is when we click, let's say for 2018, if you see the formula, here the 2017 is also hard coded, but we want this to be 2018. So again, we want a relative reference here. So this particular cell should have 2018 and the cell below should have 2019, but right now it is hard coded as 2017, so it is showing us the same data. So how to get rid of that? So let's go into the first one, and in place of 2017, which is an exact reference or the exact value, we will enter the relative reference for this particular uh, cell. So in this case, 2017 is in A3. So in place of 2017, we'll just click on A3, and A3 would be picked up in this formula, and we'll just press enter. And now if you drag this, for dragging, you need to go to the extreme right corner. If you see a plus sign here, and then you keep the left mouse button click and drag it down. And now this time the data would be correct. So now it is picking up the data for 840 and for 2018 and then 2019. And if you see the formula also, it gets changed. In the first one, it is A3, referencing to A3, then A4, and then A5. So this way, this get pivot data can be used anywhere in your data. You can comment in the comment box if you need to know anything more about pivot tables, or you are having any issues which you want a clarification on, you can comment. And if you want to learn more about the Excel formulas, the link for the two videos would be available on your screen now. You go ahead and click on those links and learn about the Excel basic formulas. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.